All right, welcome back to Developer Roadmaps. We're diving right back into our PHP journey, this time getting our hands dirty with the real building blocks of the language. Let's jump in. In our last explainer, we got the big picture of PHP and got our development environment all set up. Now we're shifting gears, moving from setup to syntax to see how this engine actually runs. So, the big question is, how does PHP actually work as a language? This is where it really starts to feel alive. We're going to see how variables store data, how PHP juggles different types of information, and maybe most importantly, how you can actually see what's going on inside your code. Okay, first up, basic syntax. And you should really think of this as the blueprint for your code. These are the fundamental, non-negotiable rules that basically tell the server, hey, this is PHP code. You need to run this.
So rule number 1, every single piece of PHP code you write has to live inside these special tags, the opening PHP and the closing PHP. This is how the web server knows what's PHP and what's just plain old HTML. Everything inside those tags gets processed on the server before a single thing is sent to the user's browser.
And listen, this next one is so important. Every statement in PHP ends with a semicolon. Just like a period ends a sentence, that semicolon tells PHP, okay, this instruction is done, move on to the next. Seriously, forgetting this is probably the #1 mistake beginners make, so get it into your muscle memory right now. All right, now that we have the rules of the road, let's talk about variables and scope. If syntax is our blueprint, then variables are the actual materials, the wood, the steel, the concrete that we're going to use to build our logic. So what exactly is a variable? Well, it's just a named container for a piece of data. That's it. And everything in PHP starts with a $sign. That's how the language tracks its data. This isn't just a suggestion or a convention, it's a hard rule. The $sign tells PHP, hey, this is a variable. But here's the thing. Not all variables are accessible from everywhere. This idea is called scope, and it basically defines where your data is visible. A local variable, it lives and dies inside a single function. A global variable, on the other hand, exists outside of functions and can be seen from almost anywhere. And then there's static, which is a pretty cool trick. It's a local variable that actually remembers its value between function calls. So what if you need to access one of those global variables from inside a function? You've got two main ways to do it. You can use the global keyword to sort of import it into the function's local scope, or you can use the special $globals array. Think of it as a superglobal that holds all your global variables, and you can get to it from literally anywhere. Okay, so we have these containers, our variables. Now let's talk about the different kinds of materials we can actually store inside them. This is all about data types. PHP has a handful of core data types you'll use all of the time. You've got strings for any kind of text, integers for whole numbers, floats for numbers with decimals, and of course, Booleans for simple true or false values. And then there are arrays, which are these super powerful collections of data that we're going to get to in just a minute. Now, this is where PHP gets really interesting and powerful. It's what we call a dynamically typed language. On one hand, you have type juggling. This means PHP will often automatically convert a variable's type for you depending on what you're doing. Like, it'll happily turn the text string 5 into a number if you try to add it to something. Then there's type casting, which is when you take control and manually force a variable to be treated as a different type. And that brings us to a really important idea you have to grasp. PHP is flexible. It adjusts types automatically, but it's your job to stay in control. This flexibility is amazing, but if you're not paying attention, it can lead to some really unexpected behavior. All right, so we can store data, but what good is that if we can't see what's in our variables? This next section is all about our toolbox for inspection. And trust me, this is absolutely crucial for figuring out what your code is actually doing. For just spitting out simple text, you're pretty much always going to use either echo or print. They're super similar. Echo is a tiny bit faster and can handle multiple things at once. Print, however, acts more like a function. It can only take one thing, and it always returns a value of 1. Honestly, 99% of the time, you'll probably just use echo. But what if you need to really look inside a variable, especially something complex like an array? That's where these two come in. Printr is great for getting a clean, human-readable summary. But vardump is like the crime scene investigator. It gives you everything. The data type, the size, the value. It's incredibly detailed and your go-to for serious debugging. And I want you to remember this. Debugging is your best friend. It's how you understand what your code is really doing, not just what you think it's doing. If you master these inspection tools right from the start, you're going to save yourself so much time and headache down the road. Okay, let's move on to building our first real data structures. We'll start with something simple, constants, and then we'll dive into one of the absolute powerhouses of PHP, arrays. So a constant is basically a variable that can't be changed. Once you set its value, it's locked in for the rest of the script. This is perfect for things that should never change, like an API key, database settings, or maybe a version number. It just adds a layer of safety and predictability to your code. And you'll see two main ways to create them. You can use the define function, or you can use the const keyword. They both work, but you'll find that const is generally preferred in more modern PHP, especially when you start working with classes. Okay, arrays, this is huge. Think of arrays as a collection of labeled boxes, where each box holds a piece of data. First, you have indexed arrays. These use numbers as labels, 0, 1, 2, and so on. They're perfect for a simple, ordered list. Then you have associative arrays, which let you use custom text labels like name or age. This is amazing for organizing related data, like a user's profile. And finally, multi-dimensional arrays are just arrays living inside of other arrays. This lets you build really complex, table-like structures. And this really gets to the heart of the language. Arrays are where PHP's power really shines. They're simple, they're dynamic, and they are just deeply versatile. You'll use them for everything. And just like that, you have the foundational pieces in place. You know how to write the syntax, and you have the materials, variables, data types, and arrays. You are now officially ready to start building things with actual logic. So, in our next explainer, we're going to take these building blocks and learn how to make decisions, repeat actions, and organize our code with functions. Be sure to continue your journey with PHP, conditionals, loops, and functions. This is Developer Roadmaps. Map your path, build your career.